Good morning, folks, and welcome to Darshan America. We come to you from Washington, D.C. My name is Ramesh, Butani.
And I'm Aastha, Verma.
What a beautiful weekend it was. You know, I was actually in Florida. It was cooler there than it is here in Washington, D.C.
Well, we got the traditional hot and humid, hazy weather that Washington is known for. It came early this year.
That's
so
right.
We've been soupy and miserable, and, you know, it's a perfect start to summer.
But it is the most beautiful weekend. I got to tell you, in Washington, D.C., and, of course, politics around the country, this is the weekend when they say stars come out, but these are politicians come out. And one of the best come out was of Sarah Palin. I got to give it to her. You know, Rolling Thunder has been around Washington, D.C. for how many years now? No politician thought of connecting themselves to that Rolling Thunder. Such a beautiful sight. She did.
Well,
she gets a credit for it.
For people that might not know what Rolling Thunder is, on Memorial Day, there has traditionally been for many years now, I think decades actually, where people have ridden into the Capitol on their Harley-Davidson motorcycles.
Mostly veterans.
Yeah. Mostly veterans. Hundreds, thousands of these motorcyclists come through the city. In fact, you know, they block off the roads, and for that short period of time, all you hear are the engines of the motorcycles. That's why it's called Rolling Thunder. And Sarah Palin, I have to tell you, she's proving herself to be pretty smart, because she knows her demographic, she knows when to make a splashy entrance, and she did it perfectly. She did it to launch this whole election season. She stole the light away from just about every other candidate.
Sarah Palin, let's face it, she's on a listening tour. She's not talking much. She's just going around the bus on the East Coast. She's trying to tell Katie Couric, who really killed her career the last time, that, girl, I am going to do so much better. I am going to be the kingmaker.
Big question, of course, is she going to run? And I have to tell you, I don't think she's going to run. I think this is all a big publicity stunt. Maybe it's not even more of a stunt. I think she's very calculated. She's smart. I was curious to see what you would think of a Mitt Romney-Sarah Palin ticket. You think there's an opportunity there for her to come back as a vice presidential candidate?
If it happens, it will be in the heat of convention, which will be next year, somewhere in July. You know, but in the meantime, I really think Mitt Romney, yes, he has a first chance at it, though he's not a
very exciting
speaker. He's not a great, exciting speaker. No, I'm looking at John Huntsman. He has the money, he has the power, and the attractiveness about him. He talks very nicely. He's from a very rich family, so he has the money. He's a great guy, you know. And so is Tim Pawlenty. I like him, too.
Yeah, Tim Pawlenty has a Tea Party agenda, which, by the way, I was listening to NPR, and they were talking about the recent elections up in New York, and something very interesting happened. What happened is one of the very traditionally Republican seats there in New York actually was won by a Democrat, and the reason is because the Tea Party candidate took votes away from the Republican. And so what you saw was a jurisdiction traditionally Republican go Democrat just because of the split vote between the Republicans and the Tea Partiers. So I wonder what this is going to do to the Republican Party to have a strong candidate like Tim Pawlenty push a Tea Party agenda. Meanwhile, you've got the purists, traditionalists, Mitt Romney on the Republican side. Not very exciting. It seems to me that the excitement comes from Sarah Palin or the Tea Party. The Republicans themselves really haven't brought much excitement to the table.
I don't think one should really read too much into that race. After all, remember, the Republican candidate, the one who resigned, was the guy who lied. Even though he was married, he was sending his upper torso pictures to the women and say, hey, I'm single. So let's not read too much into it. But at the same time, it's going to get competitive. Right now, President Obama is ruling the roost, but it will become competitive come Labor Day.
I also have to say that what I saw this week on HBO really is going to play a factor in my mind as I think about the 2012 election, and that was HBO's movie called Too Big to Fail.
Wasn't that exciting?
Did you watch it?
I watched it. I was like, for 90 minutes, I couldn't turned my eyes away from that.
I wasn't quite sure what this film was going to be about, but I highly recommend to our viewers that they actually watch this on HBO. It's a good production, and you have Hollywood actors actually playing the part of people we all know in the news: Tim Geithner, Hank Paulson, people you remember from back in the bailout days.
And they look like them too. The movie was 80% facts, 20% fiction.
I was curious about that too. If they got the facts right, folks, then this was really a cliffhanger. You wouldn't expect there to be so much tension and drama in a movie like this, but it's worth the watch because it delivers. It packs a punch.
And after World War II in Germany, when the inflation was real bad, it took a wheelbarrow full of money to buy a piece of bread. And this movie makes you look at it and you can almost see every rich man go, oh my God, I could have been totally wiped out another weekend.
What I thought was interesting about the movie is they have personalities for all the big banks. You remember the ones that got bailed out: AIG, Bear Stearns, Lehman Brothers. I mean, and then you have Morgan Stanley. You have all of Citigroup, these big banks and their presidents, and the way that they are portrayed in this movie. And Vikram Pandit is also represented in the movie as the CEO of Citicorp. So it's interesting. You watch this thing, and it's a good backdrop for, as you're looking at these political candidates and you're looking at the election season coming up, we should not forget the lessons we have learned coming out of this bailout and coming out of this recession, finally.
Basically, almost everybody's screaming right now, telling us that the banks are back to their bad habits again. And I really hope that the Siegel Act, which was dismantled by President Clinton, should really be brought back. While they're looking at all these regulations to come up, that one should come up. An investment bank should be investment bank. A regular bank should be a regular bank. They cannot be mixed. It's a very bad cocktail it makes.
Well, I think most Americans do not understand the banking industry very well. This movie gives you some ability to understand what happens at those very upper echelon layers between different banks and executives, and you realize just how much of the money is really trapped, if you will, or controlled by just a handful of people, a very small group of people.
Yeah. Well, there are wonderful stories to be told. In fact, take a look at the Fortune magazine. They have the United States Fortune 500 companies, and then they give you stories, business stories. I mean, I love to read business stories. They're just so interesting. One of the ones that I read is about Ranbaxy Company. I don't know if you know about them.
Not too much.
Ranbaxy was so good that the Japanese company bought them back in 2005. They were such a good company, they actually got their formulation for one of the richest drugs of the United States. It is called Lipitor, which is for lowering
cholesterol.
Yeah,
which,
lowering cholesterol. And I want to tell you, they got the formulation right because Lipitor patent is about to go. And, one of the conditions of the Food and Drug Administration is that if you want to be nominated as the mover number one, then you're going to have to sue and bring the clear directions from the judge that the patents of the Pfizer corporations have run out. So they started that process, and they were successful at it. And that's how this Japanese company bought them. And you know what? Within 6 months, Japanese company found out that FDA has received a whistleblower letter that says Ranbaxy Company has been defrauding the United States government under many different conditions. Now, this is an allegation, of course, Ranbaxy denies that. At the same time, right now, according to Fortune magazine, they are in talks to negotiate a settlement which will be over $1 billion. But the thing is, would they keep their right to Lipitor, what they call it, generic drug, which if you get the early mover reputation, you can make a ton of money.
That's right.
70 to 80% of the original value of the drug you can sell it at, because 6 months later almost anybody can jump in, and they do, and the cost goes down to about 5%. So Ranbaxy, I mean, it's a big deal for them. So the interesting thing in Fortune are these stories. So that